Hi friends! Today we're going to discuss the costuming in the Wheel of Time. Welcome to Cinematire. This is your future. How will you dress it? I'm Samantha Ray, and this is a series where I, a fashion designer, discuss what makes for effective or ineffective costuming in science fiction media. Sometimes I'm skewing more into fantasy, and this is one of those times. In the Wheel of Time, the lives of 5 young villagers change forever when a strange and powerful woman arrives, claiming one of them is the child of an ancient prophecy with the power to tip the balance between light and dark forever. They must choose whether to trust this stranger and each other with the fate of the world before the Dark One breaks out of his prison and the last battle begins. In the opening of this series, we see people in fantasy clothing and magic and remnants of an advanced civilization. We see a coming-of-age ritual. Everything is decidedly different, yet obviously part of the same world. And all of this is in the first 5 minutes of the show. It shows, it doesn't tell, which is what I love in a show. The Wheel of Time did in that short span of time what The Witcher kind of failed to do in 2 seasons. It created a culture. When you're building a world, you need all of the blocks to make it convincing. You need language and history, architecture, trade, war, clothing, art. All of it is important. When we come on the Two Rivers village, we feel the fantasy peasant essence we've come to expect from this type of world. It feels comfortable, and we can tell what kind of people these are. And as the characters start to talk and engage with each other, we get clues about their lives and their lifestyle. As the camera lingers on them, we start to notice things like natural fibers, mostly linen, wool, and leather, and a fairly finite range of dye colors. And interesting closures, lots of cool kind of like fabrics and leathers. The women all have this similar hair design that reminds us of the braid ceremony just moments ago. This is building the culture of this village. It's letting us know who they are and giving us clues to how they live. Enter Lan and Moraine, outsiders. They dress differently, their hair is different, and an accessory Moraine has, a ring that no one in the village has, sets her apart. They know this piece of jewelry and what it represents. As we get to know our ragtag group of hero kids, what they're wearing subtly indicates things about them. Rand is boy, basic, blue, nothing exceptional. He has hair a different color than everyone in the village, and that seems sus. Egwene is girl, soft, lavender, feminine, unassuming silhouette. Matt is poor, clothes are big and tattered and dirty. Perrin is adult boy, mature looking, clothing sturdy, and he looks soft and confused a lot. Nynaeve is adult girl woman, serious clothing, lots of accoutrement. So I have heard some complaints about the coats and a few of the things that the kids wear, that they're like a little bit too modern or current to us right now. Do we know for sure they don't have sewing machines? This is another turn of the wheel, meaning a cycle of existence has already happened, right? So who's to say that they don't have non-electric sewing machines? Another small thing I want to point out is the racial diversity of this show. I get so sick and tired of racially homogenous fantasy, and this is the thing I wish more shows would do and that they're finally starting to do. Each city, village, castle, etc. is a journey from one place to another, so it makes sense that there would be some sort of racially mixed pockets from place to place. Two Rivers village is mostly black, white, and mixed race, and racially ambiguous brown. A few episodes later, they end up in a village and then a castle that's mostly Asian and white. The travelers are mostly black, white, and mixed race, specifically mixed race with light eyes. Of course, there are people of other races in those villages, but they're few, which denotes relocation, and I love that. Especially in a world that we learn later is in the future and has existed before. Why wouldn't they exist now? It's refreshing to see a racially diverse fantasy story for once and have it be such a non-issue, and they literally never talk about it. Each village has the same kind of staples, shirts that button or tie off center on the chest, mostly skirts for women, mostly pants for men. There's a lot of interesting embroidery from village to village, just like all the clothing being different. The village and city layouts and architecture are all different too, which so easily denotes culture and history. Two Rivers and every other village have this kind of like obvious homespun look to them. They look like they all use similar techniques to make their homes and buildings, but they don't look like carbon copies of each other. They look like they work for the surroundings that they're in, and they're like built into it. The hair design is also very particular. The of-age women in the Two Rivers village wear a long braid, but each woman has kind of like a braid that works for her specific kind of hair. Girl children appear to have bangs and a center part. The men mostly don't have hairstyles in this village, and they just kind of like wear it the way that it grows out of their head. The Aes Sedai all appear to have beautifully designed, like kind of subtle or intricate hairstyles. It feels like part of their uniform, like they made a conscious decision that they wanted it to look this way with what they were wearing. The travelers all wear locks with decorations likely to go along with their lifestyle of being on the road, with being a low maintenance protective style. Now, obviously, I couldn't do this video without talking about the badass women of the Aes Sedai. One of the first Aes Sedai that we're introduced to is Moiraine, and I have to say, from the moment I saw the shoulders on her coat, I was hooked. I knew if one thing was going to look like that, the costumes would be handled with the kind of care I expect from responsible world building and beyond competent costume departments. Knowing nothing about the world going in, Moiraine's look screamed uniform, station, rank, respect, intimidation, fighter, order. Everything she wears is a varying brightness of a very specific shade of blue, and it seemed purposeful to me, and I wondered if it was gonna be like with Avatar and Shadow and Bone, like does color denote the type of magic you do, or like the tribe you come from, or whatever. We do see Aes Sedai at the very beginning. They're the Red Sisters, and at that point we don't know anything about what they are, just that they're this like group of women, all the same kind of thing, all wearing red, but in different outfits. It's a very easy like out of sight, out of mind scene. So later when we see Moiraine in her blue, it's easy to conjure the memory of the Red Sisters and think, oh, head to toe one color. I wonder what type of organization they're part of. The next Aes Sedai that we meet is being held captive by what appears to be religious fanatics. It's got those kind of context clues that we get when we know something is supposed to be kind of derivative of like Christianity or like the Crusades. I will get to the kind of religious fanatic looking people in a minute, but this Aes Sedai is wearing goldenrod yellow in an interesting leather tooled vest, and it gives us clues that there are more colors to come. We finally see more colors in greater numbers in episode 4 when Nynaeve and Lan get to an encampment where they get help from Moiraine. We see red and green, and that they all have kind of like different tastes and different personalities. And I appreciate that some of the women wear headscarves and that more shows are starting to incorporate them into the culture of the worlds that they're building. We finally see all the colors of all of the Aja in episode 6. Everyone in their group colors, but they all have like diverse aesthetics. The Amerlin's seat, the head of the Aes Sedai, has one of the most innovative and interesting fantasy gowns I've seen. It actually kind of reminded me of the costumes in The Wrinkle in Time, but like turned all the way up to 11. The way the fabrics are manipulated on her look unlike, I mean, really anything I've seen besides Wrinkle in Time, but again, like it just was more. It's otherworldly and imposing, feminine and rigid, and it's sculpted like a dream. The Aes Sedai all have warders, and the warders appear to all wear kind of like dark neutrals, blacks, grays, maybe like dull brown. And I appreciate the costume department working with the actors to get a curated look to go along with their character. In an interview with Daniel Henney, the actor who plays Lan, he said that they happily included nods to his Korean heritage in his own costume. I mean, when a costume department is willing to work with the actor in that sort of way, I trust their hand in world building. The man holding the goldenrod colored Aes Sedai captive is in head to toe white, as are all of the other people in the encampment. And it feels very Crusades. It evokes this feeling of religious oppression. I'm reminded of the costumes from Paradise Hills. The zealots from Raised by Wolves, that is another good show. One of the things that really makes him and them so scary is how starkly white and clean their clothes are up top and how dirty they are in the hems. Also the fact that he has blood on his face and his hands and none on his uniform. Of course, lastly, the fact that he's keeping Aes Sedai rings as murder trophies, that is some serial killer shit right there. The construction, crispness, and uniformity of what the White Guard wear is very intimidating, down to the smallest detail. Most of them have this armored sleeve. I don't like that they have closures in the front, yet still have a visible zipper in the back when they remove their over jacket. And that's like kind of a Witcher level offense that's very irritating to me, especially in costumes that are so beautifully made. The Gleeman has a nomadic feeling to him. The lining of his coat is patchwork. He could exist now in our world. He could exist in a fully science fiction show or an imaginary past. He's interestingly timeless, and by making him kind of like under-designed, he could fit in a lot of different stories. And the standout detail of his whole look is the patchwork lining of his coat. It's so cool. The travelers are so different from everyone else in the show. They're almost what I imagined when I read about the Egyptians in the His Dark Materials trilogy. I thought their look was so interesting. Hand-woven textiles, bright colors, and cheery caravans, they have this decided culture. And an absolutely excellent behind-the-scenes series that Prime put out on YouTube, they did a couple of episodes about the costuming department and their inspirations and techniques. I'm gonna put the link in the description. They said their inspiration for the travelers were the people of Peru. And I also felt like I was kind of seeing some Hmong influence there too. You could feel the influence without it feeling fully derivative of another culture, and it made me want to know more about their culture. There are several instances of armor, and they're all interesting, and they do their job, and they're different, which is more than I can say for The Witcher. And I'm sorry to keep like bringing it back to that, but there were so many missed opportunities on the armor in the first season of The Witcher. Anyway, the armor in this show is so cool, and it's all so different, and you can tell that it's different from city to city and castle to castle, and I really love that touch. Tar Valon is really cool clothing-wise. The bright saturated colors, the interesting, intricate patterns in the fabrics, and new silhouettes that we haven't seen yet. Many of the women wear these overdresses buttoned at the bust and busy patterns with nice trim. Many of the men wear like high-waisted, full-legged pants with wide wrap belts, like almost kind of Middle Eastern, North African kind of feel to it. It's just so incredibly different and very sophisticated compared to what we've seen, like besides the Aes Sedai. They probably have better looms, more talented weavers, more wealth and access to trade. There are people in the city walls who look like they're probably from abroad, which I appreciate. You've got this kind of big bustling city with lots of money, you're gonna have travelers. Streets are just like a little too clean though. It's very soundstagey. It's interesting how many rituals there are. When the Aes Sedai come back with the false dragon, the boots of the Aja who was killed are facing backwards on her horse. They're all wearing white for mourning and funerals, and it looks like the ring of the dead Aja gets returned to the melted gold used to make new rings. That's how it appears to me, at least. Aldara is another city with a very different culture, but like Tar Valon, we see people in its walls that look like they're from other cities and other villages. Most of the men in the city appear to have their hair in a top knot. The clothing of the city seems to be mostly like dark colors, natural fibers, and like vaguely Pan-Asian silhouettes. I love the look and the feel of Lan's family. There's so many different interesting textiles. The king and his sister have really cool looks. The king has a mantle made of like bird feathers that are made to look like a bird. His sister is wearing this symmetrical white dress with an asymmetrical element on the skirt. Later, she's wearing something that reminds me of something designed by the Japanese designer Takuya Angel. It looks like samurai-inspired streetwear with cool hand-painted and over-the-top interesting sleeves. And her armor is really interesting, intricate, and amazing. I'm almost positive it's all made of painted leather. I like Loyal. That's it. I just like him. That's it. No notes.
That is very odd. I like oddities.
I'm really intrigued by Siwan and her dad's tattoos and clothing. So we only see them. We don't see the city. And the textiles they have are very specific. Where they came from, what do these tattoos mean? These are two people who look like they're part of a very specific culture and so different from everyone else that we've seen. I want to know more about their people. So I hope that we kind of get more background on her next season. One thing I didn't like was there's this nightshirt Moraine wears in episode 6 that just kind of looks like a men's dress shirt, lab coat hybrid designed by Oscar de la Renta. And I don't like it because it doesn't look like it belongs in this world.
Am I forgiven, Mother?
Excuse me? Excuse me? Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry. Mommy? Sorry.
One of the best scenes in the entire show is the cold open of episode 7. And I know the internet just like lost their entire mind about it. We have a pregnant woman who, using context clues, is wearing what appears to be some sort of uniform for battle. She has flat armor over her chest, which is so refreshing. And it also appears to be both protecting her guts and supporting her stomach. Her hair and face are covered. She tears her face covering off once she goes into labor. And she's got red hair. The only other redhead we've seen so far is Rand. Coincidence? I think not. In the flashback of 3,000 years ago, we see a technologically advanced society. The architecture is different. It's nothing like we've interacted with so far. The clothing of the two characters, reminiscent of what we wear now, but so different. The woman has this jacket that's got like negative space lapels and an asymmetrical sleeve vent. It's so cool, and it's unlike anything I've seen. I want to know everything about this world, like everything. The dark one looks like he could easily fit in this world of 3,000 years ago. I want to see more of this in the next season. The last scene we see is a little girl in a beautifully embroidered smock dress on a beach as several ships approach. The decks are filled with tons of people in so many cool costumes. Face paint, head to toe adornments, unlike anything we've seen so far in the series. Good way to hook us for the next season. This episode is brought to you by a costume department who gave us wigs and weaves in this show that just looked like real hair. After so many shows in the last 2 years where the wigs were obvious, it's refreshing. Now to ask you, if you were to use clothing clues to indicate cyclical time, what would you include? There are so many costume tropes in fantasy. What would you add to uniforms to make them make more sense, to work better in a fantasy world? Thank you for joining me for this episode of Cinematire. I was drawn to this world from episode 1, and it makes me really want to go out and read the books. And I know there's a million of them, so don't remind me. If you like the video, please hit the thumbs up. Feel free to comment. And if you want to know when new videos are coming out, please consider subscribing. If you want to see behind the scenes stuff and episodes before everyone else does, please subscribe to my Patreon. Information in the description. Thank you to all my amazing patrons who help with the channel. I adore you, and we couldn't do this without you. All of your comments in the early videos really help. So until next time, have good adventures. Now to ask you. And then I didn't come up with a question to ask.